James Patterson stood in line at Chicago O'Hare International Airport, checking his watch. He was early for his flight to New York, where he needed to meet an important client tomorrow morning. As a top corporate attorney with 15 years of experience, Patterson was used to flying at least twice a month. He wore his usual business travel outfit, a navy blue suit, crisp white shirt, and his favorite red tie that his daughter had given him last Father's Day. His carry-on bag contained his laptop, legal papers, and a change of clothes. Nothing unusual, nothing different from his hundreds of previous flights. When Patterson reached the front of the security line, he handed his ID and boarding pass to the agent. The woman looked at his papers, then at her screen, then back at Patterson. Her smile disappeared. "Sir, I need you to step over here," she said, pointing to a separate area. Patterson was confused, but did as he was told. "Is there a problem?" he asked. "Just procedure, sir," the agent replied without making eye contact. As Patterson waited, he noticed white passengers moving quickly through the regular line. 10 minutes passed, then 20. His flight would board in 45 minutes, and he still hadn't cleared security. Finally, a male agent approached. "Mr. Patterson, we need to do an additional screening." "Why? I have TSA pre-check. I'm a platinum member with your airline," Patterson said, keeping his voice calm despite his growing frustration. The agent shrugged. "The system flagged you." While the agent went through Patterson's carry-on, he overheard two airline employees talking nearby. They didn't notice him listening. "Another one," said the first employee, a young woman. "Yeah, system says high risk," replied the second, a middle-aged man. "But he's wearing a nicer suit than my husband's wedding suit," the woman said, looking confused. "Just following protocol," the man answered with another shrug. Patterson felt his stomach tighten. This wasn't his first experience with random screening. As a black man in America, Patterson had learned to expect these situations. But something about this felt different, more systematic. After the thorough search found nothing suspicious, Patterson was finally allowed to proceed. He reached his gate just as boarding began. As he waited in line, he noticed something odd. 3 other black passengers, a woman in a business suit, an older man in casual clothes, and a young man in a college sweatshirt, were all pulled aside for extra bag checks at the gate. On the plane, Patterson couldn't stop thinking about what had happened. Instead of reviewing case notes as planned, he opened a new document on his laptop and began typing. He recorded every detail of his experience, including the exact words he'd overheard. "High risk," he typed. Based on what exactly? Patterson had spent his career helping companies navigate legal challenges. He knew how systems worked and how they failed. As the plane took off, he made a decision. This wasn't just about one bad day at the airport. There was something bigger happening. By the time the plane reached cruising altitude, Patterson had already drafted an email to 5 of his closest attorney friends, all black professionals who traveled frequently. "Have you experienced unusual screening with this airline? Please share details. I'm collecting information." Within minutes, responses started coming in. Patterson's legal mind began connecting the dots. This wasn't random. This was a pattern. And patterns could be proven. The responses to Patterson's email came faster than he expected. By the time he checked into his New York hotel that evening, 23 replies filled his inbox. Each one told a similar story. "Marcus, a surgeon from Atlanta, pulled aside 3 times last month on that airline. Same high-risk nonsense." "Tanya, a college professor, I watched white passengers walk right through while they went through my purse twice. When I asked why, they said system protocol." The pattern was clear. It wasn't just happening to Patterson. It was happening to black professionals across the country, especially those flying with Continental Airways. Patterson ordered room service and spread his notes across the hotel desk. His client meeting was important, but this new issue kept pulling at his mind. As he ate his dinner, he created a simple spreadsheet to track the data from his colleagues' experiences. The next morning, Patterson woke up early. He handled his client meeting efficiently, but his thoughts kept drifting back to the airport incident. During lunch, he called his assistant back at his law firm in Chicago. "Sandra, I need you to pull something for me. Can you get our firm's travel records for the past year? I want to see how many times our attorneys have been flagged for extra screening and which airlines were involved." Sandra sounded confused but agreed to help. I'll have it by tomorrow morning. After finishing his business in New York, Patterson flew home without incident. The difference in treatment between airlines was striking. No random screening. No high-risk flags. Just normal, respectful service. 2 days later, Patterson sat in his corner office reviewing the data Sandra had compiled. The numbers were shocking. Black attorneys at his firm were 4 times more likely to face additional screening on Continental Airways compared to their white colleagues. On other airlines, the numbers showed no significant difference. This isn't coincidence, Patterson muttered. This is policy. He picked up his phone and called Dr. Elaine Washington, a computer scientist specializing in algorithm bias whom he had represented in a patent case last year. Elaine, I need your expertise on something, he said after explaining the situation. Sounds like a classic case of algorithmic bias, Dr. Washington replied. Companies build these security systems with historical data that's already biased. The algorithm learns the bias and makes it worse. Can we prove it? Patterson asked. With the right data, absolutely. Patterson spent the next 3 weeks gathering evidence. He set up a secure online forum where Black professionals could report their experiences with Continental Airways. The responses flooded in, over 400 in the first week alone. Meanwhile, he quietly reached out to former Continental employees. A breakthrough came when Lisa, a former customer service manager, agreed to talk. They installed the new security system last year, Lisa had explained during their confidential meeting at Patterson's office. They called it Smart Screen. It assigns risk scores based on patterns of concern. What patterns? Patterson asked. Lisa looked uncomfortable. They never said explicitly, but we all noticed who was getting flagged. When I raised concerns to my supervisor, he told me the system was mathematically objective and to follow protocol. Patterson showed her his data. Lisa's eyes widened. This confirms what I suspected, she whispered. The most standing evidence came from Michael, a former contractor who had worked on Continental's systems. He provided screenshots showing the algorithm's variables included factors like name origin probability and demographic indicators, thinly veiled proxies for race. Patterson now had what he needed: statistical evidence, insider testimony, and technical documentation. The airline wasn't just allowing discrimination, they had programmed it into their system. That night, Patterson stayed late at his office, staring at Chicago's skyline through his window. What had started as a personal frustration had revealed something much bigger. He picked up his phone and called his old law school friend, now a civil rights attorney. Ben, I think we have a case that could change the airline industry. Are you interested? Ben Harris arrived at Patterson's office early the next morning. The two attorneys had been friends since their first year at Harvard Law School 20 years ago. While Patterson had chosen corporate law, Ben had dedicated his career to civil rights cases. They hadn't worked together in years, but this case demanded both their expertise. This is bigger than I thought, Ben said, looking through the files Patterson had prepared. You've done incredible work gathering this evidence. Patterson nodded. I had to. This isn't just about me. It's happening every day to hundreds of people. They spent the day building their legal strategy. By late afternoon, they had outlined a plan that would hit Continental Airways from multiple angles. We need to form a legal team, Ben suggested. People with different skills. Patterson agreed. I'll cover the initial costs. This is personal for me. Over the next week, they assembled their team. Maria Gonzalez, an algorithm expert who had won cases against tech companies. David Chen, who specialized in class action lawsuits, and Aisha Jackson, a former prosecutor with trial experience. The airline will claim their system is just about security. Aisha warned during their first team meeting in Patterson's conference room. They'll hide behind fear of terrorism. Which is why we need more than just stories, Maria added. We need to prove their algorithm itself is discriminatory. Patterson pulled out his credit card. I'm hiring a data science team to analyze the patterns. It won't be cheap. James, that could cost tens of thousands, Ben cautioned. I know, but how much does our dignity cost? Patterson asked quietly. How much does justice cost? The team worked tirelessly for the next month. They interviewed dozens of affected passengers, consulted with experts, and built a detailed analysis of Continental's screening patterns. Patterson personally contributed over $75,000 to fund the investigation. Their breakthrough came when Dr. Washington's team completed their algorithm analysis. Using statistical modeling, they demonstrated that Continental's system gave black passengers risk scores that were 350% higher than white passengers with identical travel patterns. "This is the smoking gun," Dr. Washington explained, pointing to charts on her laptop. Their system uses seemingly neutral factors that actually serve as proxies for race. Armed with this evidence, Patterson knew it was time to approach Continental Airways. Rather than immediately filing a lawsuit, they decided to give the airline a chance to address the problem. Patterson arranged a meeting with Continental's legal team and senior executives at their headquarters. The room was tense as Patterson and Ben laid out their findings. "As you can see, your smart screen system has a clear racial bias," Patterson explained calmly. "We have statistical proof, testimony from former employees, and hundreds of documented cases." Continental's chief legal officer, a stern woman named Victoria Reed, shook her head. "Our system is based entirely on security considerations. Any racial disparities are coincidental." "Coincidental?" Ben asked, sliding a folder across the table. "These aren't coincidences. These are people's lives." The folder contained photos and stories of those affected: a black pediatrician who missed his daughter's graduation because of extended screening, a black female judge repeatedly pulled aside for random checks, a black pastor and his wife separated from their tour group in a foreign country. Continental's CEO shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "What exactly are you asking for?" Patterson leaned forward. "We want you to acknowledge the problem, compensate those affected, and completely overhaul your screening system with proper oversight." Victoria Reed laughed. "That's not going to happen. Your evidence is circumstantial at best." As the meeting ended without resolution, Continental's executives clearly believed they had the upper hand. They thought Patterson was bluffing. He wasn't. On the elevator ride down, Ben looked worried. "They're not taking us seriously." Patterson nodded, his face determined. "Then we moved to phase 2. It's time to make this public." The next morning, Patterson sat at his kitchen table sipping coffee. His phone rang. It was Alicia Winters, a reporter from the National Times. One of the affected passengers had shared their story with her. "Mr. Patterson, I understand you're building a case against Continental Airways for racial discrimination in their security screening. Would you care to comment?" Patterson had expected media interest eventually, but not this soon. He had to make a quick decision. "Yes, I can confirm we're investigating a pattern of discriminatory practices at Continental," he replied carefully. "I can send you our preliminary findings if you're interested." "Very interested," Alicia said. By noon, Patterson's phone wouldn't stop ringing. The story had spread to major news outlets. Continental's stock price dropped 7% in a single day. Ben called, sounding worried. "James, Continental's CEO just released a statement calling our claims baseless and sensationalist. They're fighting back hard." "Good," Patterson replied. "That means we got their attention." That afternoon, Patterson and his team gathered in his office to plan their next move. The media attention had brought an unexpected benefit. Dozens of new witnesses had come forward, including 5 former Continental employees willing to testify about internal practices. "Continental is claiming their system is purely about security," Maria said, reviewing the airline's public statements. "But our new whistleblowers say different." One former security trainer had saved internal training materials with troubling instructions. "Pay special attention to passengers who appear out of place or don't match the typical business traveler profile." "That's code language," Aisha pointed out. "It gives employees permission to use racial stereotypes without explicitly mentioning race." Patterson nodded. "Continental thinks they can win this in the court of public opinion, but we need to move this to an actual court." The team spent the next week preparing the formal lawsuit. They decided on a 2-pronged approach: a class action suit representing all affected passengers, and a separate regulatory complaint to the Department of Transportation. Continental's response was swift and aggressive. They'd hired Preston and Brooks, a powerful law firm known for defending major corporations. They'd filed the motion to dismiss our case. David reported after reviewing Continental's legal response. They're claiming we can't prove intentional discrimination. They're right about one thing, Patterson said. Proving intent is hard, but we don't need to prove they meant to discriminate. We just need to prove their system has a discriminatory effect. The first court hearing was set for the following month. Meanwhile, Continental launched a public relations campaign portraying themselves as victims of unfair accusations. They released statistics showing they screened passengers of all races, carefully avoiding mention of the vastly different rates of screening. Patterson knew they needed to keep public pressure on while preparing their legal case. He arranged interviews with respected news programs where affected passengers could tell their stories. A black neurosurgeon described missing a chance to assist with an emergency surgery because of extended screening. A black diplomat shared how Continental's high-risk flag had caused him embarrassment during an international mission. Each story made Continental's position weaker. The airline's lawyers requested a private meeting with Patterson's team. This time, they brought a new offer: a confidential settlement of $500,000 and minor adjustments to their screening procedures. $500,000. Patterson repeated, looking at Continental's legal team across the conference table. For hundreds of affected people, that's insulting. And your proposed adjustments don't address the algorithm itself, Maria added. You're treating the symptoms, not the disease. Continental's lead attorney leaned forward. Be reasonable, Mr. Patterson. Courts have consistently sided with airlines on security matters. National security trumps everything else. Patterson stood up, gathering his papers. Discrimination isn't security. It's just lazy and wrong. We'll see you in court. As they left the meeting, Ben whispered, They're getting nervous. Patterson nodded. They should be. But we need something more to really shake them. We need to find out who designed that algorithm. The breakthrough came at 2:17 a.m. Patterson was working late in his home office when an email arrived from an anonymous address. The subject line read, Continental's smart screen, inside information. Patterson clicked the email, suddenly wide awake despite the late hour. The message was brief. I helped build the system. What they're doing isn't right. I can prove it. Attached was a file containing technical documents about Continental's smart screen algorithm. Patterson wasn't a tech expert, but even he could see the problems. The system assigned higher risk scores based on factors like name origin probability and demographic deviation from route norms. Patterson immediately called Maria, despite the hour. I'm sorry to wake you, he said when she answered. But we just got our smoking gun. The next morning, Patterson's team gathered to review the documents. The anonymous whistleblower had provided enough technical details to prove that Continental's system was designed to flag passengers who didn't fit the typical profile for certain routes, which in practice meant targeting black passengers, especially on business-class flights. We need to verify this is real, Aisha cautioned. Continental will claim these documents are fake. I've already confirmed they're authentic, Maria said. The coding style matches Continental's other systems, and the timestamps align with when Smart Screen was developed. Patterson nodded. Now we need to find more people affected by this system. It's time to expand our class action. The team launched a website where passengers could share their experiences with Continental's screening practices. They'd also place targeted ads in business publications read by professionals who travel frequently. The response was overwhelming. Within 2 weeks, over 700 people had completed their online form, most of them black professionals who had experienced random additional screening when flying Continental. Dr. Marcus Johnson, a heart surgeon from Baltimore, became the face of their case. He had missed an emergency surgery because Continental's security held him for 90 minutes despite his medical credentials and urgent pleas. That patient needed me, Dr. Johnson told Patterson during their first meeting. Another surgeon stepped in, but there were complications. I'll never know if I could have prevented them. Patterson and Ben decided to add Dr. Johnson as a named plaintiff alongside Patterson himself. His story was powerful, and Continental couldn't claim he was just an angry attorney looking for a payday. As the class action grew, Continental's public image suffered. Their stock dropped another 12%. Competitors began advertising their fair and efficient security procedures. Continental's CEO finally held a press conference, announcing an independent review of their screening practices. but he still denied any wrongdoing. Too little, too late, Ben commented as they watched the press conference. They're still not admitting the fundamental problem. The court scheduled the first major hearing in the case. Both sides would present initial arguments about whether the class action could proceed. The night before the hearing, Patterson received another anonymous email. Check the programming team names in the documents I sent. Look at who was removed from the project. Patterson searched through the files and found a list of programmers. One name had been crossed out, Dr. Elaine Washington, the very algorithm expert Patterson had consulted earlier. Early the next morning, Patterson called Dr. Washington. You worked on Smart Screen, he said when she answered. Why didn't you tell me? There was a long pause. I was bound by an NDA, she finally said, and I'm ashamed of what happened. I raised concerns about bias in the early testing. The algorithm was flagging black passengers at much higher rates, but Continental ignored my warnings and removed me from the project. Would you be willing to testify? Patterson asked. I've been waiting for someone to ask. Dr. Washington replied, Yes, I'll testify. As Patterson walked into the courthouse that morning, he felt the momentum shifting. Continental had hidden the truth, silenced internal critics, and denied the obvious. But now their secrets were coming to light. The hearing was about to begin, and Patterson had one more surprise for Continental Airways. The courtroom fell silent as Judge Eleanor Martinez entered. She was known for being fair but tough, especially in discrimination cases. Continental's legal team sat confidently at their table, surrounded by stacks of papers and 3 assistants. Patterson's smaller team looked calm despite being outnumbered. We'll begin with arguments on the class certification, Judge Martinez announced. Continental's lead attorney, Richard Townsend, spoke first. He was tall with gray hair and an expensive suit. Your Honor, this case should be dismissed before it wastes more of the court's time, Townsend began. Continental Airways uses standard security protocols to keep passengers safe. The plaintiffs are trying to turn routine security into a racial issue. Townsend displayed charts showing that Continental screened passengers of all races. The numbers speak for themselves. This is about safety, not race. When it was Patterson's turn, he walked slowly to the center of the courtroom. Your Honor, Continental isn't telling the whole story, Patterson said. Yes, they screen passengers of all races, but not equally. He presented their own data showing black passengers were 4 times more likely to be flagged as high risk. But most importantly, Patterson continued, we now know their system was designed this way. The judge leaned forward. That's a serious accusation, Mr. Patterson. We have a witness who can confirm it, Patterson replied. Dr. Elaine Washington, who worked on Continental's Smart Screen algorithm until she raised concerns about its racial bias. Townsend jumped to his feet. Objection. This is the first we're hearing of this witness. The defense hasn't had time to prepare. Your Honor, Patterson responded calmly. Dr. Washington only agreed to testify yesterday. We've submitted her statement to the court this morning as required. Judge Martinez reviewed the papers. I'll allow the testimony. Dr. Washington can be deposed by the defense next week. Townsend looked worried for the first time. The judge then addressed both sides. I'll need more information before deciding on the class certification. Continental Airways must provide all documentation related to the Smart Screen system, including design specifications and testing data. Townsend objected again. Your Honor, those are proprietary business secrets that could affect national security. Then you can submit them under seal, Judge Martinez replied firmly. But you will submit them. As they left the courthouse, reporters surrounded Patterson. One shouted, Mr. Patterson, what do you hope to achieve with this lawsuit? Patterson took a moment before answering. Justice costs money in America. When businesses discriminate, they usually change only when discrimination becomes expensive. We're going to make discrimination very expensive for Continental Airways. Back at the office, Patterson's team reviewed their next steps. Continental had been ordered to hand over their internal documents within 30 days. They'll try to hide the worst parts, Aisha predicted. That's why we need to keep finding witnesses, Ben added. Former employees who know what's really in those documents. The anonymous whistleblower reached out again, this time providing Patterson with names of Continental employees who had raised concerns about the screening system. The team contacted each one carefully, aware that Continental might be watching. 3 more former employees agreed to testify. One had emails showing that Continental's management knew about the racial disparity but decided it was an acceptable trade-off for efficiency. Meanwhile, Dr. Washington prepared for her deposition. Continental's lawyers would try to discredit her, but she had saved her original research, showing the algorithm's bias. They'll claim I'm disgruntled because they removed me from the project, Dr. Washington told Patterson during their preparation session. But I have the test results showing exactly why I objected. The media coverage intensified. Other airlines began reviewing their own screening systems, worried about similar lawsuits. Continental's stock continued to fall. Continental's CEO called an emergency board meeting. The company needed a new strategy. Fighting Patterson in court was becoming a losing battle. That evening, as Patterson worked late in his office, his phone rang. It was Victoria Reed, Continental's chief legal officer. "Mr. Patterson," she said, her voice tense. "Continental would like to resume settlement discussions." Patterson smiled slightly. "I'm listening." The settlement meeting was set for 9:00 a.m. at a neutral location, a conference room in the downtown Marriott Hotel. Continental had requested no media presence, and Patterson agreed. He arrived early with Ben and Aisha, reviewing their strategy one final time. When Continental's team entered, Patterson noticed the difference immediately. Gone was their previous arrogance. Victoria Reed was accompanied by the airline's CEO, Thomas Wilson, a sign that Continental was taking this seriously. "Thank you for meeting with us," Wilson began, his voice tense. "We believe we can resolve this matter without further litigation." Victoria slid a folder across the table. "Our offer is $1.5 million in total damages, distributed among the class members. We'll also review our screening procedures and provide additional training to our staff." Patterson didn't touch the folder. "Mr. Wilson, is that really why you came here? To offer basically the same deal we already rejected, just with a bigger number?" Wilson looked uncomfortable. "What exactly are you seeking, Mr. Patterson?" "Justice and real change," Patterson replied. "Your current system is designed to discriminate. Reviewing procedures and more training won't fix that." He laid out their demands: $3.5 million in damages, complete replacement of the smart screen system, an independent oversight committee to monitor the new system, and a public acknowledgement of the problem. Wilson's face reddened. "A public acknowledgement would destroy our reputation." "Your system is destroying people's dignity every day," Patterson responded, his voice firm but calm. "That matters more than your reputation." The negotiations lasted for hours. Continental's team made phone calls, left the room for private discussions, and returned with slightly improved offers. By late afternoon, they had agreed to the $3.5 million figure, but were fighting hard against admitting wrongdoing. "We cannot and will not admit to intentional discrimination," Victoria insisted. "Then we'll prove it in court," Patterson replied. "And when we do, the damages won't be $3.5 million. They'll be much higher." As the meeting seemed ready to end without agreement, Dr. Washington texted Patterson, "CNN is running a special report tonight on airline discrimination, featuring Continental's smart screen." Patterson showed the message to Continental's team. "You're running out of time to control this narrative." Wilson stared at the message, then whispered something to Victoria. She nodded reluctantly. "We need to make one more call," Wilson said. When they returned 30 minutes later, Continental had a new offer: $3.5 million in damages, replacement of the smart screen system with third-party oversight, and a carefully worded statement acknowledging unintentional disparities in their screening process. "We'll need the statement to be clearer about the harm caused," Ben said. "And we want Dr. Washington on the oversight committee," Patterson added. By 7:30 p.m., they had reached an agreement in principle. The lawyers would spend the next week finalizing the details. As they were packing up to leave, Wilson approached Patterson privately. "You could have taken our first offer and walked away with a lot of money," he said. "Why push so hard on the system changes?" Patterson looked him in the eye. "Because next month, I'm taking my 12-year-old son on his first business trip with me, and I don't want him to learn that being black makes him high risk in America." Wilson had no response. The next day, Continental Airways issued a press release announcing a comprehensive settlement of the discrimination claims and a system-wide review of their security procedures. Their stock price stabilized for the first time in weeks. National news covered the story extensively. Other companies with similar algorithms began quiet reviews of their own systems, worried about becoming the next Continental. Patterson received hundreds of messages from black professionals thanking him for taking a stand. Many shared similar experiences with other companies and institutions. That evening, Patterson appeared on a primetime news show. The interviewer asked, "Some people are calling you a hero. How do you feel about that?" Patterson shook his head. "I'm not a hero. I just had the resources and knowledge to fight back. Most people facing discrimination don't have that advantage." "What's next for you?" the interviewer asked. Patterson smiled. This was never just about Continental Airways. This was about changing how companies use algorithms to make decisions about people. And we're just getting started. 3 months after the settlement, James Patterson stood at a podium in the conference room of his law firm. Cameras flashed as reporters filled every seat. Behind him stood Dr. Washington, Ben, and representatives from civil rights organizations. "Today, we're announcing the launch of the Algorithm Justice Initiative," Patterson said, his voice steady and determined. "With $1 million of the Continental Settlement funds, we're creating an organization dedicated to finding and fighting discriminatory algorithms wherever they exist." The crowd applauded. Continental's case had become much more than one lawsuit against one airline. It started a national conversation about hidden discrimination in technology. The settlement's impact was already visible across the airline industry. Continental had replaced SmartScreen with a new system designed with input from civil rights experts and data scientists. Security lines moved more efficiently, and complaints of unfair treatment dropped dramatically. Other airlines had quietly reviewed their own systems, making changes before they could be targeted by similar lawsuits. The Department of Transportation had announced new guidelines requiring airlines to test their security algorithms for bias. After the press conference, Patterson met privately with Marcus, Tanya, and other class members who had shared their stories. "Thank you for standing with me," Patterson told them. "Your courage made this possible." Marcus shook Patterson's hand firmly. "No, thank you for giving us a voice. I've flown 3 times since the settlement, and not once have I been pulled aside for random screening." Tanya nodded. "My daughter asked me last week why people in airports were treating us differently now. I told her it's because someone decided to fight back." That evening, Patterson took his son to dinner to celebrate. 12-year-old Michael was quickly becoming aware of racial issues in America, and Patterson had shared age-appropriate parts of the Continental case with him. "Dad, did you always know you were going to win?" Michael asked as they waited for their food. Patterson smiled. "No, I didn't. But I knew we had to try." "How did it feel when they finally agreed to everything?" Patterson thought for a moment. "It felt like when you stand up to a bully, and they finally back down, not just for you, but for everyone they've been bullying." Michael nodded, understanding in his young eyes. 1 week later, Patterson received an unexpected call from Thomas Wilson, Continental's CEO. "Mr. Patterson, I wanted to let you know something," Wilson said, sounding different than during their tense negotiations. "After our settlement, I ordered a complete review of all our company policies, not just security. We found 5 other areas with similar problems." "Are you fixing them?" Patterson asked. "Yes, and I wanted to thank you," Wilson said quietly. "This has been educational for me personally." Patterson was surprised by the call but encouraged. Real change often started with personal realizations like this. The Algorithm Justice Initiative quickly grew, hiring experts in law, computer science, and civil rights. They developed tools to test algorithms for bias and offered legal support to people facing algorithmic discrimination in housing, employment, banking, and healthcare. 6 months after the settlement, Patterson was invited to testify before Congress about technology and discrimination. As he prepared his testimony, he reflected on how far they had come. What began as one humiliating experience at an airport had exposed a system of technological discrimination affecting thousands. The $3.5 million settlement had made headlines, but the real victory was invisible to most people, algorithms being quietly fixed, discriminatory systems being replaced, and companies becoming more careful about how they use technology. On the day of his testimony, Patterson received a text message from Dr. Washington. Continental's new system passed its 6-month review with flying colors. Equal treatment across all demographics. We did it. Patterson smiled as he put his phone away and walked into the hearing room. This was why he had become a lawyer in the first place, not just to win cases, but to create lasting change. As he began his testimony, Patterson looked at the senators seated before him. The fight against discrimination hasn't ended, he told them. It's just moved into new territory, the algorithms and artificial intelligence systems that increasingly make decisions about our lives. And we need new tools to ensure that technology serves justice rather than undermines it. The room fell silent as everyone listened. The battle against Continental Airways was over, but the larger fight for algorithmic justice had just begun.